Welcome everybody. Today I am so excited because we're here with Amanda Bude, who is, well, I can list off all the things that she does. So she runs a business called Groovy Babies, which is based in Queensland. She does hypnobirthing classes, so she's a hypnobirthing instructor. She's a midwife. She does baby massage. She's a mother. Have I missed anything out there, Amanda?
No, just a sleep consultant.
Well, yes, and that's what the Groovy Babies is all about.
Yeah, it is.
And Amanda's helped hundreds of families get better sleep and therefore some sanity, I would like to think. And she's really, really passionate about helping families and not just giving them, a piece of paper and saying, here's a routine, get on with it, but really it sounds like you really like to delve in deep to the whole family dynamics and what's going on there. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it is. I approach sleep from a very holistic point of view. So yeah, it is. It's never just about what's on the surface. There's always reasons, things that are going on underneath as to what's showing up at that particular point in time.
Great. And now you're clearly very passionate about all things related to birth and babies and families. So can you tell us how you came to work in these fields and, when did you sort of see that real need for the sleep training?
Yeah, so I sort of went on my own journey when I became a parent with my own children and, being a midwife. I kind of ran out of options when my little girl turned 6 weeks of age. I thought that I was quite prepared for what was going on. I had all this medical experience and old ego was out there. And once I hit past that 6 weeks of age, I had no idea. I was reading books. I was Facebook wasn't that big then. So social media definitely wasn't that much of an option on trying to search on Google and ask questions on mothers groups. But yeah, my journey with her led me to a sleep school when she was about 8-9 months of age. And as it turned out, she had allergies. So there was a reason why she was very unsettled. And when I was at sleep school, the methods that they were trying to get me to do to help settle her wasn't really in alignment with how I naturally parented at that particular point. And in the end, it wasn't about her sleeping and selling. It was actually about the fact that she was actually unwell. Yeah. And then fast forward a year and I had our twins. And then again, they still had allergies, but they were very reflux babies and again, ended up in sleep school at that particular point in time, got them onto a bit more of a routine with feeding and medication. And again, they were trying to make me do more cry methods with them. But every time they cried, they vomited. So it was more a matter of, I left that particular environment going, well, what do I need to do to settle these babies? I'm trying to settle 2 children at once here. Help me out. Excuse me. And I ended up learning how to voice settle them. So it was something that I came up with. And fast forward another few years later, I was with a friend and she said, "Hey, Amanda, I'm having all these issues with my children. I can't get them to sleep." And I said, "Well, try this, this, and this." And she goes, "Oh, you should become a sleep consultant." I'm like, "Oh, how do you actually do that? How do you do that?" So currently in Australia, sleep consulting is unregulated. There isn't anywhere that you can really go and learn to become a sleep consultant. So you have to reach outside Australia. So that's in the end what I ended up doing 4 years ago was finding a diploma. Being medical, I wanted a degree or a diploma or something that wasn't a weekend program. And really looked at the holistic side of things, that looked at nutrition, that looked at environment, that looked at, all those sorts of things that impact us and how we sleep and settle long term.
Where did you have to go to do that, Amanda?
Yeah, so the institute I did my original, my original training through is based out of America, but they now have consultants around the world. So it's now internationally acclaimed and recognised here in Australia. And yeah, it was a lot of work. It was almost as much work as doing my diploma of midwifery as far as contact hours and things. So yeah, I certainly bit off more I could chew at that particular point in time with 3 small children at home. But
but then it helps your family life. So it's not a bad set of skills.
Yeah, not at all. My children sleep very well. So and my husband regularly says I put him to sleep. So yeah, there we go.
Maybe you do have that special calming
voice.
Yeah. Apparently I have a talent for putting pregnant women to sleep as well. Now look, on your website, you run through some great top tips for helping your baby to sleep. And I encourage everyone here to go check out that video, and I'll put the link at the bottom. Look, I was hoping we could just run through a few of these today. And what I did is I asked some of my clients, what are the questions that you want to ask Amanda? And obviously there was some overlap between clients and a few concerns that were common amongst some of my new mums. So I thought we'd just run through.
Yeah, sure.
And look, everyone needs to understand we are absolutely touching the tip of that iceberg, and there's so much more to sleep. But obviously, I've got Amanda for a short period of time, so we're going to run through, a few of the basics. And if anyone has any further questions, and I'll put Amanda's details on the link so that, they can follow up with you personally. So let's start with the big one. I've had some mums express some concern. They think their baby's not getting enough sleep compared to what the books say. So they say, a baby should have X number of hours of sleep as a newborn. So how much sleep do you think a newborn baby does need, and how does that change in the first year? I just want to get an idea of what is considered normal.
Yeah, sure. So really a newborn, you'll see even up to about, 3 months of age, because I always block my clients like 0 to 4 months, sort of 5 months to 12 months and 12 months onwards. Okay. So yeah, I separate it. And that's simply because the sleep and the way that sleep is integrated is very different in those stages, and it's all to do with development and the science of sleep. And so the younger ones is normally about 14 to 17 hours in a 24-hour period.
Okay.
As they get a bit older, it can be anywhere between 12 and 15 hours for that 5 months to 12 months. 1 to 2 can anywhere 11 to sort of 12 to 14 hours, and that's just a total sleep in there. Obviously it's segmented into night sleep and day naps as well.
Yep. And do you see issues with babies getting a lot less than that sleep over a period of time? So chronic, if a baby is meant to be having, did you say 14 to 17 hours in that first 3 months? If they're kind of averaging 11, 12 over a period of time, is that detrimental to their development? Yeah,
they do. Well, 30 to 40% of all children have sleep issues. They generally just aren't good sleepers. And
that's a lot.
It is. It's quite a bit when you look at it. And yeah, they do. They develop what's called fragmented sleep patterns. But fortunately and unfortunately, generally it is caused from us as the parents. So, there will always be a number of factors that will exacerbate that fragmented sleep patterns. Children will always go on, sleep regressions, to do with development, environment,
illness,
temperatures, illnesses, teething, all those sorts of stuff. A lot of that quite naturally will interrupt their sleep patterns, but those sorts of things long-term aren't an excuse for bad sleep habits.
Yeah. Okay. Fair call. So let's talk about routines. When I had my baby, the advice that I was given was basically just feed your baby on demand and, do what feels right for you, which, to be honest, I didn't find particularly helpful at all. And I kind of I remember at about 3 to 4 weeks ringing my mum. I was in London. I rang my mum in Australia. I said, I can't do this anymore. I have no idea what I'm doing. And I did some more reading and looked at different types of routines and things like that, which actually worked really well for me. So if we talk about routines, how early do you think people should start looking at routines, and how rigid versus flexible do you think we should be with those?
Yeah, look, I obviously work with women that are breastfeeding also bottle feeding. And when I first start to work with clients, I always ask them what their long-term plans are, when they're going back to work, what do they sort of, see as what their breastfeeding career is? Because if you follow strict, rigid routines, often babies will drop their night feeds a lot earlier, and that is obviously not necessarily great on their calorie count, because a lot of mums, what they do is they don't swap the calories through the day. And that can, I think it's something massive. By the time it's 6 months of age, there's up to 70 or 80% of women have actually ceased breastfeeding. So they are trying to follow strict, rigid routines, which aren't, in essence, a match for long-term breastfeeding success. Okay. So when I talk routines, I don't go necessarily, I talk about the difference between baby-led routines and parent-led routines. And it depends on your type of parenting, whether you are more of a parent-led person or a baby-led person. often you can't do either until a baby is close to 3 to 4 months of age. You can't force a baby to eat, you can't force a baby to sleep, and you can't force a baby to poop and wee. So they're the three things that we as parents can't force our children to do. So when it comes to a routine, I generally will always get parents to follow their baby scheduled awake time. So what is a normal wake time for their age for their baby? Also based on what their weight is, as well as to whether it's definitely not less than 4 months, but 5 months and older, whether it's reasonable to be expecting them to be dropping feeds through the night. And yeah, so just feeding on demand. And there's a big thing between understanding cries as well, because there's a difference between feeding on demand, looking for hunger cues, and it is feeding just when the baby opens their mouth and cries as well, and just sticking the boob in the baby's mouth. So
I'm smiling because that was so me. I was like,
yeah,
baby crying, feed, baby crying, feed, baby crying, feed. Oh, baby has sore tummy and way too often.
So it really goes back. And, you know, I totally agree with you. It's very hard unless you're doing one-on-one support with a lactation consultant or, you know, someone like myself in those earlier days. It's hard to sometimes pick a baby with their personalities, which is a hunger, which is tired, you know, which is uncomfortable. And babies are born with 9 innate signals that they cry for. So hunger and tired is just only 2 of those 9 innate signals that they communicate to us with. So, yeah.
It's a big learning curve as a new mum, isn't it?
Definitely. But in those earlier days, I tend to follow not the feed on demand and sleep when your baby sleeps, because they're really noisy, so it is often hard to sleep when they're sleeping. But I agree. I don't necessarily think that statement is really that helpful. It doesn't give you the education behind what is happening, you know, with feeding on demand and sleeping when the baby sleeps. It is more to do with the wake cues.
Yeah. So that probably follows on nicely too. On your website, you're talking about helping the baby set their biological clock. So what are some of the tips that you can give to new mums to help their babies do that?
Yeah, sure. So circadian rhythms are our biological clocks, and they do repeat every 24 hours. And they influence our patterns of sleeping, waking, rest, activity, hunger, eating, and fluctuations of hormones that we need to keep all of that in sync. So children get a very good sense of well-being and ability to fall asleep and stay asleep when these timings are in sync, and they thrive. So a few things that I say is you start with your environmental cues, is that to set the baby's clock for awake time, for daylight at the beginning of the day. So most bubs will wake through the day anywhere between 6 and 8 a.m. in the morning. And, you know, the idea is that they would be back in bed between sort of, you know, the earlier ones up until about 3 months of age. They naturally aren't ready to go to bed until about 8, 9 o'clock at night. So trying to force them to go to bed between 6 and 7 often is impossible because naturally, biologically, according to their circadian rhythms, they're not meant to go to sleep till 8 to 9 o'clock at night. Also, babies, whilst the first 48 hours, they are under the influence of melatonin from the mum. And then after that, they actually don't start secreting their own melatonin until close to 11, 12 weeks of age. So their sleep-wake cycles actually free run unless we give them environmental cues about when to wake and when to sleep. So normally the easiest thing is to start at the beginning of the day, so waking up to a good day's sleep, and then follow their natural biorhythms through the rest of the day.
So you're saying the first thing in the morning, just getting some sunlight. So
you can do sunlight, but even as simple as that, it's like, you know, good morning, opening up the blinds, haven't you had a good sleep? And then, you know, picking them up. So you're doing, I mean, what I would call a dramatic wake up. It's a little bit more theatrical than that, but because it's opposite. So through the night, you know, everything's quiet. You're not turning the lights on. You just do the quiet nappy change, and, you know, it's calm, and you're trying to, you know, if they won't go back to sleep as often, they don't when they're younger, you know, you're keeping it fairly calm and fairly peaceful, and, you know, then it's time to get up, sort of thing. And same goes for nap times as well. In the early days, some babies sleep really easily, just, you know, out in the bright lights of the kitchen. Some babies do need a little bit more of a calming environment to nap quite easily. They need help switching their little brains from alert to snooze.
Yep. Okay, great. So you can really, really assist with that.
Yeah, definitely.
And I love that you talked in your video and on your site about setting consistent bedtime routines. And I remember having a very good friend of mine who was having a lot of issues with putting her little bit of the man down to sleep. And she went to the sleep school here in Perth. And when they were just questioning her, they basically discovered that she was doing something different every night. And so it was different times, but it was a different routine. And they said, you know, whatever you choose to do, depending on, you know, what you like to do as your routine, just try and do the same thing each time around about the same time. So your feed, your bath, your story, your song or whatever, just so the baby has that, the expectations and that understanding that what comes next is the bedtime. So can you talk us a little bit about what kind of bedtime routines you recommend?
Sure. Well, babies or toddlers, everyone right through that first few years, they only seek out what's familiar. And what is consistent, what is persistent. That makes them feel safe and secure. It's predictable. They know what's going to come next. Anything that's not that predictable, so with the older children that I work with, you just see that resistance happening. They don't get it. They don't understand. And that's when you will get bedtime resistance or frequent night waking or more higher temper tantrums. So I always say there is a pre-bedtime routine and then there is actually a bedtime routine. So I don't actually count a bath as part of the bedtime routine because sometimes a bath will actually be really stimulating for a child. It won't actually be calming. So it'll be like, all right, well, what happens in that 30 minutes after the bath? So it's quite normal for children after they have a bath to then do running around exercises or they get really excited or that's called the forbidden sleep zone. So that
sounds like my little children at the moment.
They do, and it's an ideal time for a little bit of connection and rough and tumble and play, which is very, very important before going to bed, especially in our busy lives these days. And so a bedtime routine. I normally get my parents to make a list of all the steps that they're actually doing, as you just suggested. And it would be right from what time are they turning the lights down? Are they actually turning the lights down in that hour before going to bed? Are they feeding their child in low light? Or are they bathing their child in low light? I've got parents often that feed their children in the bath. So is that actually part of a bedtime routine or is that part of a pre-bedtime routine? So, it is. It's something simple as after they've had a bath, you'll have that little bit of rough and play and then, or tickle fest or daddy time. Daddies tend to be more rough and play at that particular time of night than calming. And, it will be consistent, maybe a book, definitely maybe some music or white noise, but just look at the steps that you're doing that. Putting the blinds down. When are you putting the nappy on? When are you putting them in their sleeping bag or sleep suit? Are you doing it before that calming routine or are you doing it, as part of the calming routine? So a lot of those steps. And you can't necessarily get it wrong. Some kids like to have a bit of a sing-song, a bit of a cuddle, story time. The older ones like, guided meditation CDs that there are out there now. Brushing the teeth as well. So toothbrushing is part of that, wind down routine. And then when they're looking at where the feed is, and so is there actually a feed as part of the bedtime routine or is the feed actually out of the bedtime?
And I suppose the great thing about having that routine is that's very transferable. If you're traveling, you can still, if you go on to a different time zone, you can still use that, basic structure.
Yeah.
That can really help babies.
And if you keep it fairly simple, so even 5 steps, it means that it's easy replicated by dad or whoever else is the other care provider. And or if you guys, if the parents want to go out, then somebody coming in like a babysitter or a grandparent can actually replicate the little routine. It's quite easy. Yep. And I sort of said, you've got to think about it long term. Don't make it too complicated. I once had one client that sung a song for every single tooth that they were brushing. So, I've had people do bedtime routines that last up to 1.5 to 2 hours.
Wow.
So, and this was like a 19-step bedroom program. And I was just like, no, we just got to cut it all out. This stuff is real. It happens. So it's just keep it to 5 steps and make it no longer than half an hour as far as the bedtime routine goes. And everything else is pre-bedtime.
It can take half your evening.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to settling, because this is a
Yeah.
huge topic, and a lot of the questions that I got from clients was related to settling and how to settle a baby. So I think a lot of women are worried about, am I creating a rod for my own back by, picking up and cuddling my baby? Should I avoid feeding the baby to sleep? I just wanted to get a little bit of an idea of what your tips are for settling a baby to sleep, because I know I've had some clients go to sleep school and been told, let your baby cry it out, and it's not sitting comfortably for them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess you need to look at the history of all of that. Crying or behavioural methods like cry it out techniques, and there's 26 different types of methods out there, behavioural methods that are around. Any type of technique is not actually recommended under 6 months of age by the Australian Infant Mental Health Association. So they're quite strong on their policies and their position statements with that. Letting a baby cry it out, it just depends on what their types of cries are and why is it they've actually had to go to the point where you feel like you need to let them cry to self-soothe and self-settle. Self-soothing is a learned experience and also a developmental experience as well. And even as adults, if you think about what you need to do going to bed, we to self-soothe ourselves. I don't know about you, but my husband still does a hell of a lot of things to self-soothe himself before he actually goes off to sleep at night. So, it's all about routines and cues in doing that. So when it comes to settling, every child obviously is different and unique, and there's everything from, singing to touch to swinging to rocking to feeding. Feeding to sleep is actually really natural. Like, it is a natural thing to do, to feed to sleep. Breast milk is full of oxytocin. So, it's very natural. And breast milk, especially in the evenings, has got a higher level of melatonin in it. So that transfer over to the baby is what helps them to settle. The issue comes is that if the baby is then waking up every hour and a half through the night, and often what parents need to look at is if they've got frequent night waking, is what's present when the baby's going to sleep versus what's missing when a baby's waking up. So there'll always be a few things missing. So again, baby falling asleep has all these things that they need when they're going to sleep. How much parental presence, effort, support is there? Then when the baby wakes up, what is it that's missing? Make a list of what is missing. And then sometimes you need to wean back all the things. Like if you've been rocking them for 20 minutes, you might need to start rocking them for 15 minutes. If you're moving around the room, then you stop moving around the room, you start to hold. So you start to wean off anything that you've actually been doing. The little new ones, up until about 4 months of age, you replicate the womb environment. So Dr. Harvey Karp's 5 S's, the swaddling, shushing, sucking, being on the side. And number 5 is swinging or motion on the side. Yeah, so if you replicate all of those, so some babies need all 5 of the 5 S's to help them go to sleep. Some dogs might only need 1 or 2 to help them go to sleep. But yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to the settling side of things. Parents, if they're not consistent with a new settling technique over a period of 3 to 4 days, even 3 to 5 days, parents will always not persist or be consistent for long enough.
Okay.
And anything new that a baby doesn't understand or see as familiar will always show resistance. And depending on the baby's personality will be on how loud that resistance is.
So you were talking about the things that you use to put the baby to sleep initially. And then, so if they're waking frequently and you're going in and shushing or patting every hour, hour and a half, then do you think it's more important to change what happens during the night, or is it more about that routine when you put them to sleep?
Yeah, so often it is about that routine when you're putting them to sleep or what you've actually set up. But yeah, if a baby is waking frequently through the night, it's not necessarily about just implementing a behavioural method. It's looking at is the baby getting enough feeds through the day? What is the routine through the day? What is the environment? So is the temperature right? Is there noise? Something that's disturbing the child at night. What's the sleep surface like? Is there something too stimulating going on? Are they overtired? Because a child that's more overtired wakes more frequently at night. The biggest one is that incoordinated schedules is the reason why kids are frequent night waking.
And it just makes no sense, does it? Like, we always think that the less sleep they get, the more tired they're going to be, and then they're going to have a bigger sleep overnight. And it has exactly the opposite effect in small people. The more tired they get, the worse they sleep.
Yeah, that's it.
It defies logic, doesn't it?
It does. And but it's also because neurologically they can't wind down. They need help from their external cues and environment to help them wind down. So, it's similar to us. If we're up reading or watching an excited movie or something exciting is happening the next day, we need a little bit more assistance to help quieten our thought processes down before we're actually ready to go to sleep. But especially with the older ones, frequent night waking isn't just a matter of fixing it with a behavioural fix. There's always normally incoordinate schedules and things that are going on as to the reasons why they're waking. And
if we talk about the self-soothing and self-settling, at what kind of age are we talking about there? Would a baby start to be able to do that, do you think?
Yeah, so self-soothing isn't normally, well, it's called emotional regulation. And we as not normally able to really emotionally regulate fully like an adult until close to between 2 and 3. So, that holy grail of self-soothing is generally perplexed in social media and parent-led books. Your baby should be able to self-soothe. And self-soothing itself is actually a journey. So we ourselves, even as adults, we self-soothe with props, be it flipping our pillow backwards and forwards, be it listening to, any type of thing. And to plug a child in its own cot without any type of other soothers around or learn how to soothe with other soothers is really quite unreasonable. Because they often have no idea how to actually do that, as I said. So, even to begin with, it's a little bit of hierarchy, or it's a little bit of a journey. So, your first level is like we use our voices to soothe. And then the next level is we use our voices and proximity. So they will need some sort of parental touch or assistance or tight wrapping or swaddling or something. The next one is like you use your voice and you use touch, and then you use proximity to soothe. So you might need to be right there with your hands on, but they might still need a little bit of parental presence nearby. And then the next one is external support. So sometimes they still need a little bit of motion, or they will move themselves. You'll see them what I call nesting, so moving around the cot to get into a certain position, similar to what we do.
Or like a puppy does.
Yeah, that's it. And then the next level is when you're holding them to sleep, and the next one is hold and feed to sleep. So, there is that step of graduation right from the word go as a newborn. We're holding and feeding to sleep to right through to the top. Self-soothing was where what I had to learn to do with the twins, which was using my voice or using voice to help them soothe to sleep. So, parents can practice that. This drowsy but asleep thing causes so much confusion, because it's kind of like, well, how do I know when my child's drowsy to sleep? Because when I put them down, they wake up. It's like, well, on average, a baby takes 10 to 20 minutes to actually fall asleep. So if you do anything in those first 10 to 20 minutes, if you're holding them, then they're automatically going to wake up because they feel a change in touch. They feel a change in temperature from being held, and they feel a change in motion. So they're being moved from there as well. So, there's a lot of things as far as that holy grail of self-soothing is. It's learnt.
And what about things like little comforters that I'm trying to remember how old my children were. I guess they were close to 1 when they had something they had in their bed, which both of them still have now, even at the ages of 6 and 8. They still go to bed with their little comforting toy, or my son has a muslin, which is great because you could just put it in the wash. They still go to sleep and kind of stroke and touch.
Yeah. Well, as in what age to introduce them to?
Yeah, would that be closer to that year?
Yeah, I mean, SIDS guidelines recommend nothing in the cot until the age of 12 months, but biologically, they want something with them to take them to sleep. And often a child will naturally, if you don't give them anything, they naturally will go and source out something and start bringing it into bed with them if you haven't given it. Normally around 11 to 17 weeks, when they can, they've got their fine motor where they can actually start to grab things as well, is an age that most parents will introduce the little comforters to them. If they do it, I don't recommend anything any sort of bigger than a face washer size as well, and to really look at the material that they're made out of, and look at the safety aspect of it as well, as to whether you feel comfortable your child having that. But I've had children without comforters that will do things like they will scratch the sheets, like they will do, or they will hold on to their sleeping bags as well, or they'll hold on to something on their swaddle. The next one is sucking their thumbs. They'll suck on their thumbs as well, twirl their hair. So the children will actually find their own little comforting, soothing thing as well. But normally between sort of 4-ish, 5 months, they actually have the ability to be able to hold on to something and bring it over their face. The younger babies, you naturally, when you observe them, they bring their hands over their faces anyway. So often when they're sleeping, they'll actually cocoon their eyes. So that's almost like wanting to shut out the external environment as they're trying to go off to sleep.
So they're trying to reduce their own stimulus.
Yeah, that's correct.
Now, let's move on to environment then, because you brought that up a little bit in terms of, the warmth and the light and things. So obviously environment can have a huge impact on an adult or a child's sleep. So any good tips that you can give to creating a nice, cozy, sleep-friendly environment? Yeah,
definitely. Obviously I get a lot of mums come back to me saying, oh, my baby hates the cot, or my baby will only sleep with me in my bed, or, those sorts of things. And I always say, when you're walking into your baby's room, what does it feel like? Does it feel calm and cool and destimulating, or is it full of colours and toys and the colour coordination? It's, first of all, you always get a good vibe or an instinct when you walk into a room as to whether it feels like a comfy, cozy environment, or whether it feels like a little bit more of a hyped, stimulated environment. And that goes for toys, and the proximity of toys to the cot, where the cot is situated in the actual bedroom. So with the environment, if it's next to a window, if it's under an overhead fan. Did a home visit last week when the parents opened up the door, all the lights shining in from the living room just shine directly on the cot. So other ones I've had is the cots where through the day the sunlight was filtering through and there was hot spots on the actual sleep surface of the cot. So if you put the baby in the cot, she was getting little sunlight straight onto her forehead. So there's little things to really have a look in around the room when you walk in there. Smell is a big one. Children are very sensitive to smells. I always like you can use a little bit of lavender or aromatherapy in their room. There's great aromatherapists around nowadays that can help with scents and smell. The other thing is temperature in the room. The biggest thing, the best room environment is 18 to 22 degrees for sleep. And also it's between 40 and 60% humidity. So I find baby monitors are normally out 2 to 3 degrees either way. So I love things like grow eggs, which seem to be my stock standard temperature room control thing, so I know. And then it's easy. If you know what the room temperature is, then you know what tog to be able to put your baby in sleeping bag or swaddles. Like, it takes the complete guesswork out of whether they're hot or cold. And babies regulate their temperature through their heads, not through their hands. So what else with the temperature? The environment, temperature, touch, smell, the surface, sleep surface as well. You're not meant to put sheepskins in cots and bassinets because of the fibres that come in there. I get a lot of families that think that the bed surface is not comfy enough, especially if it's cold at night. You can warm up the base. I mean, you can put not hot water bottle, but the hot, so that you're not actually putting them into bed on a cold sleep surface as well. I think that's probably...
It's interesting because I had my babies in London where, we have central heating. So it was never really an issue of them keeping warm enough at night. But then I have heard that a lot of mums, strangely enough in Perth, because we don't have any heating, it can get really, really cold here. And I think a lot of babies can struggle through the winter with actually just being quite cold because we don't have any heating
No.
summer.
Yeah, that's right, and that's a main cause for waking up between 3 and 5 in the morning, because that's when our body temperature dips to the lowest. So yeah, that they will, and it's difficult to maintain that. It might be 30 degrees when they go to bed, but then it's 22 degrees at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. But that's actually quite a different. And if your child is very sensitive to its environment, then it can be enough just to wake them up. So you can feel their hands, feel their faces, and see whether you think that they are cold. But especially if they're snuggling up to you, if the only way that they'll settle is by you picking them up and bringing them into bed with you, then most of the time it's either that they need a little bit more love touch going on through the day, or that they are chilly as well.
Cool. Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question, and I'm sorry that I didn't put it in my list of questions, Amanda, but I'm just going to throw it out there because I don't know why I didn't write it down, because it's one of the most common questions is dummies.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on dummies and sleep?
Dummies and sleep. But I actually see dummies as quite a positive sleep tool. So sucking is definitely part of the 5 S's in babies less than 3 months of age. It's actually the 5th of the 5 S's by Dr. Harvey Karp. So not all babies will need to use it as a sleep tool. It can be one that you use as a last sort of resort. But yeah, it's not an unusual thing to use all the way through in those first few months. The issue is replugging the dummies. Most parents use it as their first go-to thing, rather as maybe step 3 or step 4 as far as settling their child goes. So between the ages of 4 to 5 months, when they can't actually replug their own dummy, then that can become a bit of an issue for frequent night waking. And if you think then it's becoming more of a negative association, then that's the actual time to get rid of it. So the ideal time to get rid of a dummy is between 14 and 17 weeks. And you just need to top up on other settling skills that you might need to come up with. Once they are old enough to hold their dummy, then I get parents to teach them what I call dummy plugging or dummy physio, which is when you put the dummy in the baby's hand and guide the baby's hand to the mouth. So, and then, you can get lots of different products around. There's one called the sleepy wings or dummy wings, where they're like little ball arrows where the dummies actually fit into the sleeve of the hand. Really? So they can actually bring their hand to their mouth and find their own dummy. And there's other...
And when they fall asleep, it just kind of
comes back out. Yeah, and then when they come back again, they can put their hand to their face and use that. So that's actually a pretty good transition tool. The other one is a sleepy tot, which is a comforter, a snuggly, where it comes with Velcro on the side, and you just put the dummy in there. So you get on all 4 corners. Once they're rolling around and they can find their own dummy and plug it themselves, then often I just say put 4 or 5 in the cot. So wherever they are, they can find that dummy. Find one. And also, the biggest one is that you use it as a sleep tool. So you just use it for sleep. You don't use it when you're out and about, or if they're getting tired, or if they're whingy or whiny. Often the first thing we do is just give them the dummy, and it just sort of shuts them up, for a little while. And that's not necessarily a good thing long term for them, because it means that they're having their dummy in their mouth a lot longer than what they would if you were just using the sleep tool, and then you've got the issues with oral teething and changing of the face,
development and all that kind of stuff as well.
So that can be a good thing, but if it works out that it's becoming a negative association, then it needs to go.
Time to go. Brilliant. Okay. Thank you so much for your time, Amanda. I've learned a lot. It's been really, really useful. Is there anything else that you would like to add that perhaps we haven't covered? I know, you could probably talk about it for hours, but if there's anything else you'd like to pop in there?
No, I would just like to say that as mums, we are the experts of our own children. There are lots of people out there that are experts of absolutely anything, but these days I find mums just to trust your instinct. Like, if something doesn't feel right, just to really trust that, and just to find and search out people that you trust to give you information. Because often what's working for your next door neighbour or your brother-in-law's wife, ex's girlfriend, is not the right thing for your child. And yeah, just to go with what is important in your house, because I get so many clients that say, well, I should be doing this or I should be doing that. And I always say, according to who or according to what do you think that might be? This is how you're showing up with your child right now, or this is how your child is showing up right now. If we've got issues, then there's always ways that can be fixed. You don't have to resort to the most dramatic or the most drastic solution out there.
Absolutely. There's not a one-size-fits-all model. And, we need to take into account that we as parents have very different needs and personalities, and our children, they're completely different individually. So, yeah, what is going to fit well for one family may be a complete disaster to another. So, yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up. So if anyone wants to learn more about Amanda, I'll put the link down in the notes, but her business is called Groovy Babies, and she does do Skype consultations. So just before we finish, just quickly tell us about your Skype consultations, because obviously I have a lot of clients in other parts of Australia and also internationally.
Yeah, so I do have Skype packages available. They include an in-depth health assessment form. I always get my clients to do a couple of days of sleep logging, and then we have a Skype chat or a phone chat, depending on where you are, for 45 minutes or so, just to go through that consultation form for questions for either for us to go through. And then I develop your package. My sleep guidance packages are about 18 to 20 pages long, so they're quite long and quite thorough. And then we work together for the next 2 to 4 weeks in, guiding and sleep shaping and, implementing solutions depending on what is going on with your issues in your household.
Wonderful. And those of you that are in Queensland, then you've got Amanda nearby, so that's much even better. Excellent. Thank you so much, Amanda. I really, really appreciate this chat, and see you later.
Yeah, thank you. Lovely to connect.